Friends, before we get to the good stuff, it is crucial to understand that trading is risky. Understand that the people we speak with have been doing this for years and have put countless hours into honing their craft. These are the people on the other side of your trades. So please, we will not give you buy or sell recommendations, and this video should not be mistaken as financial advice. Always do your own research and never trade with money you cannot afford to lose. Now let's meet our guest today. Welcome everybody to the very first episode of the Dip Traders podcast. Today we have a very special guest, CrispyTrades. Crispy has been trading since 2021, and in the past 5 months alone, he's racked up just under $300,000 in profits. He has a profit factor of 1.49, a 46% win rate. His average winner comes in at around 1.7 times his average loser. His average hold time is less than just 20 seconds. And perhaps the craziest statistic is he's taken over 13,000 trades just this year alone. Crispy, welcome. Thank you for being here, man.
AB Mac, it's a pleasure to be on the podcast. Hopefully the first episode.
Yep, we are starting this thing off with a bang. So obviously you've had a ton of success in the past 2 years. How did you even get into trading in the first place?
Well, believe it or not, that was actually a long time ago. So back in 8th grade, I opened a joint account with my father, and I didn't even know why I even got into it. Maybe he mentioned it, maybe I saw some Jim Cramer, on TV. But yeah, back I don't even know what that is. 2016, 2017, opened my first joint account. I was trying to trade penny stocks even from the beginning on my Chromebook in class, and as you can imagine, didn't turn out too hot. And I think that was back when Thinkorswim still had commissions. So I was like, why am I losing money? I made like 3 pennies. I'm losing like $5-10. So yeah, I did it for like a week or so, and then I dropped it. And yeah, fast forward to about 2020. So it was actually like December 2020, technically, not 2021, but you can basically call it 2021. And that was a couple months into COVID. I really wasn't doing a whole lot. I had a PC reselling business. I would build computers and then resell them on the side, but that wasn't going crazy hot. So I saw a TikTok, right, about I think SNDL, that weed stock, and I was like, hey, I remember a couple years ago I had my joint account, so I hopped back into that, and it turns out I was actually holding Chegg, the whatever homework helping company. I bought it back in 2016, 2017 at like $10 a share, and it was at like 100. I was like, oh my god, like that's crazy. So I sold it, luckily, because I think now it's back at $10, and I'm like, hey, let's try to do penny stocks again. So I'm sure as many traders did, they went on YouTube, searched up day trading. They found Ross Cameron, a couple other guys there. So yeah, I deposited some money in there. I was below PDT at the time, and I started trading. Made $50, lost 100. I remember the first time I lost, like I think $200-300. I was like on my bed shaking. I'm like, dude, like I just lost someone's like daily wage in like 30 seconds, and I remember like the stock halted down, and I was like, why is it frozen? Like, why is it not trading? And I was like so confused, man. But like that rush of winning is what kept me going back. So yeah, after that, to wrap this one up, in 2021, I started pushing it. The first 6 months I was flat, made zero, was up like 1,000, down 1,000. And in June/July 2021 is when I broke through. And in the last 6 months of that year, I made about 50,000. Beginning of 2021, I honestly started to doubt my abilities because I was like, all right, that's good money, but I don't really know. So I started to dabble into real estate. I got my MLO license, so mortgage loan originator license. In the first 6 months, I was dabbling into that. But I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to give trading one more shot. I saw that Ross was doing pretty well on some of these days, so I hopped back in June of 2021. Actually, no, that'd be June of 2022 to the rest of the year. I made about 150,000, and then this year I've kind of just beaten all my expectations. I'm sitting, like you said, about 300,000 halfway through the year.
That is incredible. Now those early months back in 2021, you sized up pretty quickly. Did you feel any pressure from anything outside of trading that made you size up, or did you just feel like it was time to start swinging?
Yeah, not really. I think the biggest thing is just to have people around you that are better than you. So on Discord, there's plenty of communities. You can find people like you or other leaders of communities that, are just bigger traders than you in general. So, back in 2021, beginning of that, maybe I was trading 500 to 1,000 shares, and slowly when I saw the opportunities present themselves, I would size up to 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. And, it just went from there. Just once you see those key opportunities, you're like, hey, it's time to size into an area that I'd never done before. It's time to do, 3, 4, 5,000 shares, and just, progresses from that point.
And you said your dad was you opened a joint account with your dad. Was he into stock trading as well?
Not at all. He's into real estate, so the opposite side of the
Okay.
entrepreneurship area. So yeah, he doesn't know anything about stocks. I actually tried to get him into trading, but he's like, man, I don't really know. It's kind of your thing, and I'm like, give it a shot. But he's not really getting into that, which is fine. He knows what he knows, and I'm sticking with what I know.
Yep, I've tried similar things with my parents, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of dedication, and you probably know this more than anybody. Is you have to love it every single day because you're going to get beaten down, and you got to be able to get back up.
Definitely.
So, what was the process of scaling up like for you? Obviously, you were increasing the share size. Were you doing it little by little, or were you just going from 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000 month over month?
Yeah, good question. I mean, as you know, you're in the markets too. You know that things are irrational. Some days are cold and some days are hot. So in my head, the days were a bit slower and I was just grinding on like 1,000 or 1,500 shares each trade, I'd be like, you know what? The next time something's gonna really open up, I'm gonna size up. And in that split second, when something's dipping and you're like, hey, this might be a good opportunity. It's like I said before. It's like, maybe you've never done 2,500 shares or 3,000 shares, and you might be like, hey, now's the time. Let me just pull the trigger and see what happens. It's definitely a rush seeing, your P&L going up and down crazy. Like, oh my God, it's like the more you size up, it's just like a roller coaster. But like you said, I'm a scalper, over 13,000 trades in the year so far. So you kind of just get like numb to that, and you're just like, laser focused on the trade itself.
Mm-hmm. How did you manage your emotions during that period? Because, like you said, I mean, it's a lot. You can start to sweat when you're down, right? So
Yeah, definitely. And it's like I said, back in my first month or two of trading, when I took that $200 loss I was like shaking on my bed, dude. I was like laying down. I was like, there's no way. Like I couldn't even imagine someone like Ross, like, or any of those other traders doing like, 6-figure days almost. But it goes back to the point of, when you take that many trades, and obviously as a scalper, you might, the process is a bit fast forward because you take so many trades, but you can trade whatever. And at some point, you're going to be like, hey, my profits are swinging hundreds, if not thousands every couple seconds. And I'm just in the zone because I have a really high expectation of what the stock's going to do. It's, I really hope that's going to go my direction.
Yep, makes total sense. In order to like keep those emotions in check though early, was there anything that you did like routine wise or just mentally, so that you didn't spiral or anything like that?
Yeah, I say as routine goes, I'm really not one to show up super early to the markets. I used to trade the pre-market, and that kind of gets you accustomed to to kind of dabble. It's like it's the pre-market. Let me start to size up, do 1 share, 10 shares, 100, just like get the feel of things. And that definitely used to help me out, where I used to kind of slowly size up as the day progressed. But I noticed that would actually hinder me because, for instance, the pre-market would be a little bit slow. I'm maybe only 1 or 2 trades in. I could say, hey, the market's about to open. I don't feel prepared. So kind of getting over that hurdle where I can just go from no trades to all of a sudden 3, 4, 5,000 shares my first trade. That definitely takes time. That's something that no amount of watching YouTube videos or anything can teach you, which is just going from zero to hero in a split second. That quick, I mean, everyone starts at zero, but going from zero to all of a sudden, 3, 4, 5,000, or even down, that takes definitely a skill.
Yep. So you mentioned that you don't really come too early to the day. What does a typical trading day look like for you?
Yeah, good question. I typically come in between. It honestly ranges, but from 8:30 even up to like 9:15. It really just depends like how I'm feeling that day. If I feel like, the market's a bit hotter and I want to kind of see where things are going, I might show up early. But on like a day like today, for instance, I'm like, hey, yesterday was kind of slow. Maybe I should just come in later. So today, for instance, I came in about 15 minutes before the bell at 9:15. The market opens. I start seeing what's moving, and yeah, I just trade from there. Whatever's holding up, whatever's breaking highs, that's usually what I'm watching. I'm typically watching the top 5% of leading gappers. Like today, I was watching, I think, was it Hoth, HOTH? That was the number one leading gapper. Low float, sub 10 million float, super low market cap, nice gap up, and it was giving a nice range. So from there, I just trade. Recently, I'd say in the past 2 or 3 months, I'm really trying to leave the screens before 12 o'clock, before noon, and that's really helped me out with just like managing my efficiency. So, as a scalper, you're taking so many trades, you got to be really focused. If you're there from the opening bell to the closing bell, maybe you're going to be okay for the first couple months, but you want to think long term, and doing that, I can't even imagine trading from bell to bell for 20 years. Like I can manage from the opening bell until about noon, but man, you really got to think about the long term in trading.
100%. I mean, it definitely wears on you. I can tell you that. Now, I think diving into your strategy, this is probably the gold and the wisdom that everybody has come here looking for. So you mentioned that you're looking at stocks kind of near highs. You mentioned Hoth this morning, which was one of our leading gappers. It had a ton of volume this morning. What other things are you looking for in at least in your stock selection?
Yeah. So like you said, Hoth is just a perfect example, right? It's leading gapper within the top five around the area. Typically priced under $10. So according to my stats, I'm the best in between $5 and $10. Honestly, I'll trade any price range below, above. I've traded stocks like HKD at $2,000 a share. As long as it has range, I think it just comes down to that point. Like I can even trade large caps. Like yesterday, I traded Unity, made $1,000, even though it's totally different. It's like an actual company. It's not a penny stock. It might actually survive a couple more years. As long as it has range, the volatility, you're able to get in and out of the stock without a whole lot of slippage, then guess what? I'm gonna trade it, right? And it's all about the level two. So people ask, how do you know when to get in or get out? For me, because I'm a scalper, I'm looking for the quick entries. So if I'm seeing the bid is holding, if I'm seeing that it's maybe holding around a whole or $0.50, then I'll consider an entry, right? So as it dips to that level, I'm looking, is it gonna have that quick bounce off that level? And if I think that, that's gonna happen, then I'll get in and I'll look for that extension to the upside. And I'm taking quick profits, right? So I'm not even waiting for a pullback. If I think that a pullback's even coming after my entry, then I just sell it and look for the next dip.
And when you say holding a level, how long does a stock have to hold a level for? What does that mean exactly?
I mean, if you watch my raw trading footage on YouTube, you see I don't give any sort of confirmation area as long as it's holding for that split second. I'm talking about like a quarter, half a second. Sometimes I don't even wait for it to hold. I just know that with the timing of me pressing the buy button, my order going to the, exchange and it hitting and everything, it's almost like a rhythm. It's almost like a song. So the moment I see it in that area, I press the buy button. I'm looking for that quick bounce. And you can see definitely in like my top videos, my biggest trades are just it just wicks down, it just slam the buy button and it pops back up. And that's, a couple grand most of the time, depending on the share size, of course.
And then, of course, from a risk management standpoint, if you don't see that bounce, I mean, I've watched your live trading videos on YouTube. Great content for anybody who's listening. Definitely go check that out. But for people who have not seen those videos, the risk management side is key in trading. So if you don't see that bounce immediately, you're getting out, right?
Exactly. So you can basically call it, I'm risking break even basically. I want to get in and I'm just risking my exact entry. And obviously I'm not hoping to sell it if it's going to break because that's going to ruin my risk to reward. But yeah, I'm basically just getting it. For instance, I buy it at 301. I'm looking for a pop to 305, 310, and then I'm taking it. I'm not waiting to see, oh, maybe it's going to hold $3 or hit 299 and go back up. If that's my entry that I'm looking at, that's what I'm getting in.
Yep. Makes total sense. And so, as far as level two goes, I think level two is a loaded subject. There's so many things that you can look for in the level two to take a trade or exit a trade. Is there anything else in particular that you're looking for besides individual price levels?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd say my top strategy using level two, and I mean I basically use level two for every strategy, but the number one is the wick reclaim, right? So for instance on Hoth today, I believe it was a 390 zone, right? So every single time it would wick down to 390 or even break it by a penny or two, it would wick right back up. And I think that happened like 3 or 4 times. So those zones that, that buyers and sellers kind of converge and it pops back up, those are definitely my top trades where I'm willing to load up because I know, hey, if it's gonna break below that certain level, then I know that at that point it's gonna be bearish. But as long as it's gonna hold and pop back up, who knows? Maybe now we're gonna look for at a micro pullback and break through the highs. So that's definitely my number one strategy, and you can definitely see my videos. That's what typically makes me the most money on the day is the wick reclaim.
Yeah, I definitely see that in the videos. Now, in my trading, I'm looking more so at like the numbers of the level two and like what's the size of the bid and the ask. And I've found that in the higher price stocks, that might not matter as much. It's more about the movement, like you said, the price levels. Have you found something similar?
Exactly. I think someone asked me a question around that kind of line, which is, what kind of stocks do you look for? Like what kind of price action? I told him, I said, typically the lower flow, lower priced, they're going to react much better to the big buyers and sellers. But like I said, yesterday I traded Unity. That one, I mean, someone could flash up 20,000 shares. It's like a $30 stock. It doesn't even matter. Just go straight through that. So
Hmm.
that's really why like small caps, penny stocks appeal to me is because when you see that buyer, you can really tell that someone's soaking that area, someone's loading up. But I'd say especially in this market, you might not see that a whole lot. I think, for instance, on Hoth today, there was a 50,000 share buyer near the lows, and because it was near the lows, it was kind of like I don't know what you can call like a double negative, right? There's a big buyer, but guess what? It's also near the lows. So that kind of tricked a lot of buyers into getting in. So after it broke that buyer and it broke the lows, it just totally just capitulated and dropped another 30 cents. So just because you see a big buyer doesn't mean that, hey, I'm gonna get in right now. I'd say definitely that was a big strategy of mine back in early 2021. I mean, when you would see a big buyer, that thing would just go crazy. But now I think that because a lot of the COVID traders are gone, a lot of that free money is kind of gone. People are just a lot more smart, and they're saying, hey, maybe this buyer is not real. Maybe it's going to get sold into. So people definitely second guess themselves, and that's just a part of the trading. You have to adapt to the current markets.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece, and we could talk about that later. As far as the hidden buying or the large buyers go, I definitely saw that. That was a big piece of my strategy and reading Bookmap, and a lot of that I feel like has diminished in the past year. So yeah, I'm glad you're seeing these things too. But you also touched on a point where, let's say a stock has come off its highs a bit and it's basing at a certain level or whatever, but like, hey, this is also a danger zone. Do you ever have zones or kind of price action where you're like, well, maybe this is backside, maybe I shouldn't touch this. The risk to reward just isn't there anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's definitely something that as a scalper, you can kind of get lost into where you think, hey, it's basing out again. It might be soaking. You might see big buyers, but in this market, I'm not sure like the exact term for it, but I would just call it like volume death, like death by volume, by like no volume.
Hmm.
So stocks that are basing out, they look good. All of a sudden, the volume just dries up, and now it's just floating lower and lower. And you're like, why is it not trapping? Why is it not going higher? And that's definitely part of the, that kind of free money, that kind of COVID money. Those traders are gone. So, you know, the smart money doesn't want to buy at like the very end of the wedge. They want to wait for it just to do something. And a lot of times people just don't agree on a price. There's no action on both sides, and it kind of just drifts lower. And it's definitely an area where I could improve personally with just identifying the volume when it's dying out, when both parties, longs and shorts, just aren't even interested in the stock. That's definitely a really important part to avoid that volume death.
Right. And like you said, it's about the range. That's where you get the most profitability, right? When it has that range. So yeah, when it's got low volume, usually it's also got low range as well.
Hmm.
So as far as trading rules go, do you have any like max losses or like no adding to a loser, no averaging down, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. As a max stop goes, I don't have a strict max stop. I used to have a max stop back in the day. I think it was around $500, and I increased it to about 1,000. But at this point, I really don't have a strict max loss. I'd say if I take like a massive loss, like a five-figure loss, I'd probably just stop it at that point. But that hasn't happened yet in my career. And as adding to a loser goes, that was something I used to do way back, but fortunately I cut that habit really quick. And there are definitely key times where I might add, but not into like a heavy loser. Like for instance, it's like the opening range break, the stock dips, I get in, and if I'm kind of confident that it's just gonna maybe test the low or maybe do another wick reclaim like we talked about, where it kind of breaks that low and pops back up, then I might hold my original entry just because I'm like, hey, I'm getting in big size, and if I want to bottom tick this, I might get a bad fill. So, I get a nice fill, it pops, comes back down. I'm like, hey, maybe I should just add to it and just, get a nice low average because I really believe in it. That's when I'll do it, but that's typically only within the opening range. And, past like 10 o'clock, I almost never do that. It's like I said, I'm basically just risking break even. I'm looking for that quick pop. If it just goes like a penny below my entry, then I'm just out at that point.
Yeah. And as far as like determining when is a good time to average down, would you say that's a lot of intuition and just screen time?
Yeah, definitely. It's also about strategy. So, as a scalper or micro scalper, whatever you want to call it, it you always have the ability to just sell it and get back in, right? If that's a part of your strategy of just quick trades, then just sell it. Sell it, see where the buyers are forming again. But if your strategy is taking only the most A plus type of setups where you add into areas and you're scaling out over, hours, then yeah, that's your strategy. But for me, I'm like, hey, if I can get a lower average and it's really gonna hold then, and now it's gonna start to go, well then guess what? I have the bottom tick, I can risk that area, and then I can scalp it, on the way up again. So that's just how I manage my risk.
Yeah, makes total sense. You mentioned earlier in your career, or I say career, but it's hopefully going to be a long, profitable career. But earlier in your career, you said that you averaged down a bit and then you stopped. Did you have any notable losses or things that you did or notable trades and just like, oh, I have to change something about this?
Yeah, I think man, I'm trying to think. This is like way back now. I'm trying to say maybe October or November of 2021. Um, that was when man, what was that Trump stock?
Oh, DWAC.
Uh, yeah, DWAC. When that one ran, I had my biggest day ever, my first five-figure day. That was like, I think 11,000 or 12,000. And then like the very next week, or maybe the week after, I bled that all out on like AMC when it was running up at that time. And I remember I was trading on Lightspeed at the time, so I thought that I was just gonna get these crazy orders. I remember just swinging like full leverage, scalping, just a terrible idea because man, one bad trade and you're gone. I remember just like swinging on AMC. Like it would go higher, I would buy the first micro pullback, and then I would sell it at like the very bottom and go right back up. And I did that like three or four times. I was down like $6,000, and I just like, I mean, almost emotionless. I just like walked away. I was like, why did I ever do that? I think that really taught me a big lesson, and I've never really done that since. Making at that time my biggest day ever, and then bleeding out the next week. Basically, it was just like that was definitely one of the reasons why I like stopped trading the first 6 months of 2022 because I was like, hey, that could definitely happen again. Fortunately, I haven't had a drawdown over five figures this year. I believe my biggest drawdown is about 5 or 6,000. So I'm fortunate that I haven't had that happen again. But yeah, definitely that taught me a big lesson in risk management.
Well, good on you for walking away after that. Yeah, I've been there before where you see a stock like AMC that's ripping and the feeling. You just feel like you're missing out, and and this should be a super profitable stock. But yeah, some of these, they dip a little bit further. You just can't get the right read, and you got to walk away. So good on you to do that. I think that DWAC stock, by the way, I think that went from like $10 or $20 all the way up to like 150 or something.
Yeah, I think it was like 180.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. And then I think, yeah, man, that day was crazy. I thought definitely on that day, every single long thought that they were a genius,
Mm-hmm.
But quickly you can get humbled for sure.
100%. So you definitely adhere to the micro scalping strategy, buying and selling very quickly. Have you thought about refining that or adding to that and holding winners for longer, trying to get into more of like a swing trading strategy? Day trading, I should say.
Yeah, like almost like intraday swings, kind of. I'm really trying to hold a bit longer. I think like the very beginning we talked about at what point do you size up, right? And I said, you would size up to maybe 3, 4, or 5,000 shares for your first time when that A plus opportunity comes. And I think that's kind of like what I want to transition to, which is keep on micro scalp and keep on doing what I know, what I'm best at. But then if I really see that entry down, I'm like, hey, if I get in on this one, I can really just risk break even. I can just see if it wants to go higher and higher and maybe hold it for like 20, 30, 40 minutes, even longer, depending on how it goes. That's definitely something I want to adapt to. I've done it on smaller size the past couple of months, maybe holding 500 shares and like on like a $10 stock, just trying to let it ride a little bit to 12, 13, 14. But it's definitely kind of a struggle because when you're good at one thing, you just want to become like the best at it. And definitely there's a cap to micro scalping. Like today on Hoth, my biggest positions were nearing almost 20,000 shares on like a micro scalper. I'm holding for like 5-10 seconds, and I'm like the slippage that I'm getting is almost eating up all my profits at that point. I'm like, dude, like I have to start branching out because there's definitely cap to micro scalping for sure.
Yeah, well, I thought I was capped at micro scalping, and then I saw you. So, someone always comes along and pushes it further, and it's always good to see. Going back to what you said earlier on adapting. So you said that, how you trade now isn't necessarily maybe how you traded back in 2021. What would you say has changed since then?
I'd say it's always been scalping. So I've always been holding for, I'd say, under 2-3 minutes in general. Even back in 2021, like I would still take those quick entries, but I think I would be more focused on like the 1 or 5 minute patterns, especially the 5 minute. And honestly, even now, that's a big factor in my trading, the 5 minute setup. But yeah, now it's just probably probably the quickest trading that I could ever be doing. Just under 10 seconds most trades. I think my scratch trades are like 1 second. It's like ridiculous. So definitely going back to your previous question, there's definitely a cap to the strategy, but if the cap is making, 300K in 6 months, then that's not that bad, right? It could be worse.
I'd take that. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So continuing on, what would you say drives you the most in life, trading, whatever it is?
That's a good question. I think the number one thing that drives me is just the freedom of trading and the freedom it brings to your life. Honestly, naturally, I'd say I'm a pretty lazy person. Like I really, after a long time of working, I get fatigued pretty easily. So, and I think a lot of people could agree with that. That working just sucks. Just working, 9-10 hours a day, just not. Humans aren't designed for that. So the number one thing I preach is just efficiency, right? Efficiency is just, it's like I said, coming to the market, going from zero to hero very quick, trading for an hour or two, and then just leaving, and pursuing even other business adventures, right? So that's just the number one thing is just freedom, just ability to, after you're done with trading for 2-3 hours, to just do something else that you want to do or to advance your career.
Absolutely. And for our listeners who might be newer, like what are the personnel or what are the traits that a good trader needs? If they're going to be successful at this, what do they need?
Well, the number one thing probably starts with just the passion for trading. I mean, you can have whatever traits, mental or physical you have, but if you just have that deep rooted passion in it, and it doesn't mean that, you're doing it 24 hours a day, but it means that, hey, maybe you're thinking about it kind of here and there throughout the day. Maybe at dinner time when someone's talking about something, you're like, hey, I'm thinking about that chart from this morning. How could that have went if I traded it a bit different? If your mindset's kind of like that, where you're kind of thinking about it more than you really should be, then I think that's a really good sign that you could survive in this career. And definitely another thing is just the mental stamina. If you're gonna be a scalper, take, well, for instance, 50 to 100 plus trades a day. You have to have that stamina to just be laser focused, just for maybe half an hour to an hour. And if you can do that, then you have the foundation to become a good trader.
Absolutely. I feel you on the thinking about trading all the time. It's,
Hmm.
it's a blessing and a curse, right? So as far as
Yeah.
the future goes for you, obviously you've had such great success in this. What are your goals and aspirations, either in trading or in life, for the future?
Yeah, I think, man, like as trading goes, I really don't have any expectations or plans. As long as some sort of market out there is tradable, if that's crypto or forex or whatever that is, like I'll be there. As long as I can make my couple $100 a day just to pay the bills at a minimum, I'm gonna trade whatever market's out there, definitely. And as the long term goes, I just want to funnel all the gains, obviously compound them in the account, but expand throughout that, into real estate, into whatever other funds, other even venture capital. I'm looking into everything at this point, because the point of trading is not just to make a ton of money and then just to spend it, and just cycle that forever. You want to build a foundation that, hey, if I can't trade for a week or if I want to go on vacation for a month, I can afford that because, hey, the past 10, 20 years I've been building up this other business or other, pocket of money that I can afford that because, just pacing yourself out. Like for instance, I always hear the phrase, $400 a day is 100,000 a year. And yes, that's true, but is it really feasible to be healthy and mentally fit and willing to sit through that for every single day of the year? You're gonna have to account that, hey, maybe 10% of the year I'll be sick or I'll go on vacation, and just things compound on top of that. So you always want to prepare for the worst. But yeah, that's about it.
I love that. I love that. It's a very healthy approach, very mindful. So with that, can you let the viewers know where they can find you?
Yeah, for sure. So I have two social medias. I have my YouTube, which is Crispy Trades, and my Twitter, which is Crispy Trades YT. I post my daily P&Ls on Twitter, as long as some of my market comments and even just random life comments or quotes. And on YouTube, I'm posting typically 2 to 3 times a week, posting raw footage or strategies or just different things related to trading.
Yep. And I can attest to both of those places. Yeah, that this man posts pure gold. He's a blessing to the trading community. If you have not checked out his stuff, please do. It is really, really great content. So, Crispy, thank you for being our first guest on the podcast. I'm sure the listeners are going to have plenty of comments, and maybe we'll have you back on here sometime soon.
For sure. Appreciate the opportunity to be on here.